Right, so I think Flutter is pretty good because it has a great developer experience. Oh my god, React is so amazing. You can build websites and it's so fast to create websites using React. Most of the things that you need is inside the material library or the library or the SDK or the framework itself. Supported by Facebook and a lot of companies are using React. So many things good about React. Everyone say the developer experience is great. This is what the video is not about, but what this video is about is me trying to learn React as a Flutter developer. And there are some interesting things that I can relate to when I create a React website, web app, whatever.
The reason why I'm learning React is because I'm trying to build a Flutter learning platform in React. So if you're interested on why I am building in React but not in Flutter Web, comment down below if you're interested for the reason. So let's get started with the video. Alright, so this video is about me sharing you what the similarities that I've seen so far in React as a Flutter developer. So I use React with the TypeScript language instead of the JavaScript language. So for those who don't know what TypeScript is, maybe its slogan say JavaScript that scales, but it's a superset of JavaScript that compiles to plain JavaScript. So TypeScript is an open source programming language created by Microsoft, and it is a strict syntactical superset of JavaScript and adds optional static typing to the language. So what it does is basically giving strict type into the language, because JavaScript is very dynamic and it accepts whatever and doesn't really care about what type you add in. So for myself, when I develop in Flutter, JavaScript isn't a language that I like because Flutter is a static type language. So TypeScript gives me that feature that I am very used to when I develop web apps or mobile apps in Flutter. So in this video, I'm going to share about the similarities between the Flutter and React framework in terms of syntax, components, and context. So let's get started. So I have with me here two files, and the first thing is that the syntax, right? If you were to look side by side, it looks pretty similar. So the left side is, you could see Flutter code, where you can see like the extension with the stateful widget and such. And then if you were to see at the top left, it says .dart. So this is Flutter code. On the right is TypeScript or TSX. So what is TSX? So TSX is TypeScript's X. So what is JSX? It is basically like you are trying to have what Flutter has already been done. So you assign a variable to for example, a stateful widget. So JSX, in my summary, is they are trying to put in the HTML into the JavaScript world. So it makes sense for me to really develop in React. So if you see from this example over here inside the React documentation or homepage, it looks very similar to what we see inside Flutter, except for the HTML side. So in Flutter, you have a class, and then you have the component, or you could say the state or stateful widget, and then it extends from component. So React has its own object that they extend from. In Flutter, we have stateful widget or stateless widget. So that's one thing that's very similar. So Flutter has widgets, React has components. In terms of syntax, it looks eerily similar. Not the same, but similar to a sense that you don't feel that you really need a lot of HTML and CSS knowledge in order for you to create a simple website using React. So beside the component, you can see that there is types. So you got hello props and then hello state, which I'm going to explain later. So in Flutter, you also have a type. So for example, state has a type of hello message. So the next thing is that Flutter has its own constructor over here, while React has its own constructor using the word constructor. Then it uses props, or we say properties, using the type hello props that I've created over here. So hello props is an interface. So in TypeScript, there is interface. In Flutter, we probably use abstract classes. Basically, what interface or abstract classes do is that they cannot create an instance of an object. So they're just like a skeleton that you create your objects. So for React component, it has its own state. For Flutter, we call it stateful widget. So in order for you to create a React state over here, you need to create this thing called this.state. If you are a React developer, you know that you can use React hooks. But before the invention of React hooks, you probably have to use this syntax. In Flutter, you probably have to create your own variables in order for you to use inside a stateful widget. The next thing is that you can see there is a method name that is the same in both Flutter and React, which is setState. So for Flutter, because you are inside a state object, you can create a variable which is called counter, and then in order for you to change the counter, you probably need to set state. So I increase the value using the increment operator. So in React, it is also very similar. You have this .setState method, and then this will pass down the state that is currently inside the component. You then override the state object that has the counter inside it. So it's a little bit more work inside React, but once you get the hang of it, you get used to it. So like I said earlier, there is React hooks for you to make this a simpler and less confusing way. But without React hooks, this is how you set state a simple value inside your React component. So the next thing is that you have this build method that will return you UI components. So container, if you were to be inside the mobile framework, this is a div. And then you have your text widget, which is just a simple text. So inside React, you have this render function, which returns you a div, or in Flutter, it is a container. And inside a div, if you were to put any text, it is just plain text. And then you have this .props.name. So what is this props coming from? So props means properties, which we have earlier created inside our constructor using the super props. And we passed in this hello props, which is an interface that we have created so far over here. So for TypeScript, they are very anal about types and what you're passing in. So I would say it is compulsory for you to create a lot of interfaces in order for you to pass in the different properties inside your React component. So I'm very new to React. If there's a better way, leave a comment down below. So props, you could say, is the same as widget.name. So if you were to remove the properties from React and also in Flutter, let's just delete that and put this empty thing. And for Flutter, we will just remove this hello message that we got from the stateful widget earlier. So as you can see, there is two errors. So the error inside the React component, as you can see, is that name is not defined inside props. The only way for you to resolve this error is to put in a type, so which is hello props. So hello props will pass in this type where our name property is equals to the string type. So now we know that name is a string that we can find inside props. Same goes in Flutter. So the error inside Flutter is very similar, where there is this widget which points to the getter method of the stateful widget inside our state object. However, our state abstract class over here is not pointing to any type. So you could see that we need a type that is a stateful widget or extended from a stateful widget class. So the only way to resolve it is to pass in the stateful widget that we have created earlier. So we Ctrl Z, you can see that we pass in the hello message type with the property name, and then this will also means that the name property is also inside this widget getter method found inside the state object. So if you are a little bit confused, that is okay. Lastly, in terms of syntax and component, in order for you to use your newly created, for example, stateful widget or React component, you can just pass in accordingly like this. For any parameters that you can find inside a widget, you will just pass in the stateful or stateless widget that you have created. For React components, you can just pass in as a normal HTML tag. So hello message refers to the React component that we have created, and then it has parameters that we can pass in, for example, the name Taylor. Then inside for Flutter, you can just pass in using this kind of syntax. So in general, in terms of syntax and components, it is very, very similar, and I really like how I can infuse what I've learned so far in Flutter into the React framework. I've never really discussed about stateless widgets in Flutter, but for React, they have something similar. So they call it function components, which is a very simple way for you to just create a function that returns you for example, a simple HTML tag or a H1 tag. So in Flutter, it is the same. You will return, for example, a text widget. Now I'm going to go through on this thing called context. So in React, there is context that's already built in, and it is the same as Flutter. So Flutter, you'll use context in theme data, and in order for you to use the theme data inside your material app, you will probably use this syntax called theme.of_context. So this context concept is also found inside React. So in React, you have this context concept, and context is basically a way for you to pass data through the component tree, or in Flutter we call it widget tree, without having to pass props down manually at every level. For React, they have this thing called context.provider. So in order for you to create a context, you will have to just create a simple variable, and then you will activate this function called react.create context. So this is a context with the value, for example, light, that you can pass through inside a child component, or you could say a child widget. So in Flutter, we have similar things, which is called inherited widget. However, what the people who have used the Flutter framework found that inherited widget is a lot of boilerplate. So you might recognize provider instead, which is a very good package to pass down data using context. This is just my assumption, but I guess the publisher or the author of this package got the inspiration from React. So by having this, you are able to use the context feature or concept that's already been used inside React. So you can read more about this. I'll put the link in the description. And what the Facebook team has said about using context is to use it sparingly, because it makes component reuse more difficult. So you can read more about component composition, which is a simpler solution than context.
Alright, so that's about it about my sharing with React and Flutter. So there's a little bit of similarities that I found, which I think can be helpful for Flutter developers out there if you want to build a React website. So that's about it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want more of this video, click on the subscribe button down below and comment down what other things that you see in React that is very similar to Flutter. So that's about it. Stay safe and all the best. Bye bye. I